I like to watch.
After a couple of weeks, you're going to be proficient enough at least to send out like a social campaign or an email campaign.
Oh dear, TikTok.
You never know, you might win a client.
Listen, once we've finished, I'm going to have a look at it, that's for sure. Mark Edwards here with the Channel's Own podcast. With me today is Jay James. Jay is the founder and CEO of xpandly, a relatively new MSP marketing agency that offers a range of MSP-specific marketing services, but alongside a suite of broader go-to-market services for vendors and distributors. So, Jay, welcome. Good morning. How are you?
Very good. Thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the invites.
Relatively new, 2023, I think. So you probably 6 months.
Coming up to like a year and 6 months. So we actually kind of established in January 2023. Incorporated in March 2023, and then went from there.
Super. So with that in mind, as there may well be some viewers and listeners here who haven't come across xpandly to date, can you give us a quick overview maybe of the business, and also, I think it's interesting, a bit of your backstory into how and why you came to set the business up?
Yeah, I get asked this a lot. So from an xpandly perspective, I always knew that there was a gap effectively in the market for this type of business. There were already some businesses around, pretty well established kind of MSP marketing agencies, but they pretty much all had one thing in common, which is they basically niched in the industry. They weren't necessarily from the industry, right? So my background is actually in distribution. I've worked in a channel environment for probably close to 15 years, in the IT sector for probably closer to 5. But I was formerly the Chief Revenue Officer at Geocom, and prior to that I was the Director of Growth at Inti. Of course now they're the same company. Taking all of that kind of experience from distribution and kind of plugging it into xpandly made a lot of sense. There's an awful lot more to MSP marketing than just the marketing tactics or the activity. From a channel perspective, there's a whole lot of programs, vendor programs and distribution programs that MSPs can leverage. And that's kind of where our USP is. We can actually get access to those programs for MSPs. So
yes, you've got good insight and understanding specifically into the kind of, let's say, the mechanics of MDF maybe.
Yeah, it's MDF. There's a lot of other programs as well outside of MDF that MSPs can leverage, whether that's directly through their distribution partner or through their vendor. I always kind of preach to MSPs, the key thing is to actually keep close to your distribution partner and your vendor partner. So but there's an awful lot of stuff going on. We are only IT. Which we don't do anything else. So if you can imagine an MSP trying to keep up with all of the updates and all of that kind of stuff from all of the vendors, all of the channel, we actually do that, right? So a lot of our MSP clients, it's us that tells them what's happening in the channel rather than the distribution partner or the vendor a lot of the time. So we're very kind of clued up and
that's
keen.
Proactive, in terms of bringing intelligence back to them. I mean, that's very valuable.
Yeah, it is, and just outside of that, we also conduct a lot of our own kind of proprietary research. So we will go out to market, whether it's directly to an SMB or we'll do something in the channel, which is more of a research project. One of the big projects we've done recently is around Copilot. So we went directly to the SMBs, kind of asking them, do you know what it is, and do you have any intention of adopting some kind of AI over the next kind of 12 to 24 months? And we had close to 1,000 responses from SMBs. So all of that information research is really important for not just for SMBs but for distribution partners and vendors as well. But we leverage that in our marketing, right? So that those responses give us a lot of insight into how we should be marketing, what messaging we should be using, and to who. So we do a lot more things around that. Yeah.
No, super. Now, my guess is that many of your clients, be they MSP, vendor, or disty, I suppose in
Yeah.
your initial kind of conversations with them, they might have a whole basket of wants. They might want kind of, I don't know, they want to promote their business, promote the brand. But included, I would have thought, in that basket is going to be one clear objective all the time. And there's an agenda to drive revenues. And to drive those revenues, they want to generate leads. So with this in mind, in general, how can a marketing agency like Xpandly help generate leads? And what are the main tools and strategies that you would recommend?
It really depends on the client, where they want to target. We will use different tactics and different tools depending on who their demographic is, right? So a big driver for a lot of I mean, if we just focus on MSPs for now, but I mean, a big driver for MSPs is they want a bigger social presence. Now they typically see social media as your typical kind of like Meta, LinkedIn, and etc. Twitter, X, right?
Yeah.
But there are a lot of other forms of social media that they might not consider, where their customers are basically hanging out, right? So if you take like Reddit, for example, which is a forum where basically people either go to moan and complain, or they go and seek advice from others. So Reddit, actually, from an MSP perspective, is actually a very good place to be yourself. Not to sell, but to give advice and build a kind of an audience that way.
Yeah.
But of course, LinkedIn is the main driver for most MSPs.
Yeah, and before we started the podcast here today, I was chatting with Pete, the producer, and he was saying you can do newsletters on LinkedIn. I wasn't aware that was the case. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I do, and I don't recommend them. That's the reality. So I actually there's a setting on LinkedIn where you can turn off the ability for people to invite you to newsletters, right?
Right.
And I turned that off about a year ago, because everybody's got one. But the reality is, like, nobody's really using them as a newsletter, right? It's usually a couple of
No.
paragraphs. It's not a newsletter. And let's be totally frank and honest, which we are as an agency, right?
Yeah.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares about your news, right? Unless you're Apple, unless you're Google, or a huge Tesla, a huge global brand.
Yeah.
Nobody really cares. What There are some very successful newsletters on LinkedIn, but they're generally not related to IT, right? They're more
Right.
related
No.
to just general business strategy, starting a business, that kind of stuff, business advice.
Yeah.
Those are quite successful, but it's I can't
But are
imagine
you
there's going to be
saying?
a.
Are you saying, Jay, though? Because you said there's a setting there. Because what Pete was saying was that if you set up a newsletter, LinkedIn automatically sends it to all of your connections.
Yeah, and that's what's annoying about it, right? So
That's right.
if you've
Okay.
got so if you've got 1,000 connections, so like most of my connections are industry people, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
an MSP. So if you can imagine, 1,000 of those MSPs all of a sudden start a newsletter, I'm going to get 1,000 notifications, right? So I've just turned it off.
Yeah.
And
I don't think
I think
I've
a
ever
lot of
had a newsletter invite.
Yeah, no, I don't know, but it was an interesting tool for a couple of months, but
Yes.
again, this goes back to the fundamentals of marketing, right? Particularly for an MSP, and I saw this when newsletters were becoming a little bit popular about 12 months ago. You'll get one or two, and then they stop, right? The MSPs
Yeah.
just give up because they run out of things to write about, right? There's only
Yes.
so
Oh,
much you can write
completely.
about. So, yeah, right. So it was one of those things that there was some advice to start a newsletter from certain agencies, and I was just waiting for I know I'm going to receive one or two, and then by March they're going to start,
Right.
they're going to dry up. So
So is it a relatively new feature then? Because I hadn't heard of it before. I say, And I said, I don't think I've actually had any newsletter invitations. Listen, once we've finished, I'm going to have a look at it. That's for sure. But listen, you mentioned social media. We're kind of moving on to the effective use, I suppose, of technology to help generate leads. So with this in mind, and I'm not asking you to reveal any of your kind of trade secrets here, let's take a deeper dive, if we can, into LinkedIn. And so firstly, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the various types of LinkedIn account that a user might have. So we've got basic, premium, Sales Navigator, which I'm very interested in. And then also, I suppose, company pages is something that we might want to take a look at. So if we just go through those four, I'd really be interested in your assessment of them. So what do you think of the features and benefits? Firstly, let's say from the user account, of a basic LinkedIn account. What do you have to say about that? What does it deliver? Anything?
Fundamentally, what I think LinkedIn, or especially the basic account, fundamentally what I think that is just a way for you to keep an updated CV, right? So
yes, all right.
You put your experience on there, you update your job, you have a nice kind of description and all of that kind of stuff, and it forms it's basically a nice online resume. Of course, you can interact, you can engage with others and post, etc., but typically, if you're not making an investment into LinkedIn, whether it's a premium account or whether it's a sales nav license, typically, the basic account is just a way to keep your resume updated and maybe look for jobs and that kind of stuff. So
yeah. Got you. As you said, it kind of publishes it into and let's not forget LinkedIn. I think they call it talent solutions, but I mean, much of their money, I think, is generated through kind of recruitment organizations paying whatever the premiums are for that service. So moving from basic to premium, what do you think the features and benefits and maybe the advantages of the premium account? Your thoughts?
Well, the premium account gives you a few more options in terms of what you can do with LinkedIn, right? So premium account, you can turn on the creator mode, etc., etc. You can allow people to follow you rather than just connect. But also gives you the ability to in-mail or basically message people who are not directly in your network. That's limited in terms of the amount of they do in credits. If you message somebody and they reply, so if you send an in-mail and they reply, you actually get that credit back, right? So it kind
right.
of yeah. So they still try to encourage you to only really message people that's in your relative network,
right.
And that's one of the credit back. But yeah, it has a lot more. It has a lot more benefits in terms of what you can do, and et cetera, et cetera. I always feel like if people are investing in LinkedIn, a premium license, especially if they're investing in it as themselves, they haven't got their company paying for it.
Yeah.
Then they generally want to do some business development on LinkedIn.
Yeah. I think I can't remember the price on that now, but I was on it so long ago. I think I'm on a low rate.
I think it's about 50 quid. Yeah, some £50.
£50 a month or a year?
Yeah, roughly per month. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I think my subscription, although premium, is much lower than that, which is one of the reasons why I have dabbled with Sales Navigator in the past, but I kind of opted in, and I don't know, maybe 4-6 months later, kind of opted out because I didn't think I was getting any value from it at all. What are your thoughts on Sales Navigator? What are the additional features and benefits that would deliver to that person, as you said? If you're interested and engaged in your work enough to have to pay for your own premium account, what would make somebody go for the Sales Navigator account? What else does it offer?
Well, I mean, it depends on your situation, right? But if you're paying for a premium account, you almost may as well just pay for the Nav account. Right? I think there's about
it's not much more, is it? It's about gotcha.
Not much more, yeah, about £20 a month more.
Right.
Now, obviously, with the Sales Navigator account, you can do all sorts of things in terms of. I don't want to call it lead generation because all you can really do is look up records and define an audience, right?
Right.
But you can do some lead generation off the back of the data you can get from Sales Navigator, right? So it's data rich. There's an awful lot of good information in Sales Navigator.
Right.
But actually, it all depends on how well your ideal customer profile. It all depends on how well they fill in their own profile, because LinkedIn is basically pulling information from people's
Yeah.
profiles. So, if I didn't put some certain information in my profile, I wouldn't come up in your list, because I've just not done a good job of filling my profile in. So you're not going to benefit. So,
Yeah.
but certainly it's something that we use it. Just because it's just a little bit more than a premium license and it makes sense for us.
Yeah.
That being said, there's actually two different types of Sales Navigator license. There's the individual kind of license, which you can get, which I think it's around 79. I can't remember if it's dollars or pounds, but
Right.
if you use it often, it's worth the investment. And then the other, and that's if you buy it as an individual. And the other version of Sales Navigator is if you buy it as a company, and then you get the benefits of the admin panel, where you can have an administrator that controls all of your licenses. But the really, really big feature of the company level Sales Navigator actually is the integration with your CRM.
I was just going to ask that. It does integrate, does it? Because I said if you're able to search, pull that information, you can actually then take that off LinkedIn and port it into HubSpot or Salesforce, whatever it is you're using.
Yeah, we use HubSpot and Salesforce.
Right.
So LinkedIn's probably in terms of data integrity, LinkedIn is probably the best platform in terms of having up-to-date records, right? Because when somebody moves a job, they update their LinkedIn.
Yeah.
The other platforms, the other kind of like data enrichment platforms, it takes a while for them to actually rescrape and update everything. So LinkedIn's probably the most accurate and definitely the fastest in terms of keeping your records up to date. If you're going to go down that route in terms of having a company level Sales Navigator, your CRM management has to be pretty pristine. You have to have all of the integrations set up correctly, whether you use the native integrations or you're building the APIs. But it's certainly the best route to go down from a data enrichment perspective. So yeah, it has all
a lot of work though, by the sounds. As I said, it's not just up a point and click. It sounds like, as you said, interesting use of the word pristine there. You want good, up-to-date, clean information, but you want to be able to utilize it and use it appropriately. And my guess is there's an awful lot of skill and effort involved in that. Is that something that xpandly offer then? Is that part and parcel or one of the kind of services that you offer?
Yeah, the CRM integration setup, that kind of stuff. So we're a HubSpot solutions provider, which means we're certified in terms of like setting that up, implementation, migration, all of that kind of stuff. And Salesforce is something that we're very proficient in. The HubSpot stuff we do quite a bit of. The Salesforce integration, that's very, very bespoke, and I'd always recommend going to a dedicated Salesforce agency for that kind of work.
Right.
Not going to be cheap, but certainly worthwhile, right? If you're going to use Sales Navigator, if you're going to use ZoomInfo, if you're going to use Cognism, all of these data enrichment tools, and you have a sales team, make the investment. Is my advice.
In Salesforce.
Whatever CRM you're going to use, but do it right. Going back to the MSP space, right? There's an awful lot of like really bad information going around about use a free CRM, and then when you're ready to pay for one, then pay for one. Well, there's migration involved in that, so why would you do that? Why would you go from a free CRM with limited functionality and then later on go and pay for a CRM with a lot more functionality, and then you have to migrate what is effectively very limited data in your free CRM into a CRM which has the capacity to hold a lot more data. Doesn't really make sense. So a HubSpot license is, £48 a month, right? Just make the investment, right? And then you'll never have to move. You'll never have to, migrate. So it's one of the conversations we have. Pretty much every conversation I have, there's a CRM conversation somewhere in it.
Yeah. But would a company of a certain size, sorry, Jay, would they have, I don't know whether, do you see them as like for like, Salesforce and HubSpot, or are they for maybe different markets? One's more maybe SMB and one more enterprise, or is I'm wondering as to whether HubSpot is maybe more marketing maybe a better marketing tool. Would a company have both?
Yeah, we have both, right? So we use both. We use the HubSpot Professional. I think it's pretty expensive for us because we use all of the agency tools, and
right.
We've got all the bells and whistles with it, right? So it's thousands a month for us.
Right.
But you can have the base. They're effectively two different tools, right? So Salesforce was built for sales, and then it bought Pardot after, and that is now the Salesforce Marketing Cloud platform.
The marketing platform, yeah.
Yeah, and then HubSpot was effectively built for marketing, then built on a sales CRM after. So I mean, they're all competing with each other. Right? This CRM is a very competitive market, but if you are a small MSP, you only need HubSpot. You don't need Salesforce, right? You can get by, more than get by. You can run your business with HubSpot, right? Because you can also integrate your ticketing system into it and on all sorts of different things. But even if you are a one-person MSP or a two-person MSP, HubSpot is going to cost you around about £45 to £50 a month. That's it, right? You can do your sales in there, you can manage your data in there, you can do your marketing, you can integrate your ticketing system, you can build forms, you can do everything you need to do in there. So make the investment is what I'm telling people. Stay away from free CRMs.
Super. I'm tempted to invest. So you're doing a good job of explaining, certainly to myself, and hopefully this is of value to the audience that we've got on here as well. Is that it's one thing to have access to the tool, and we've all got access to the tools, but then it's how to use the bloody thing at the end of the day. As I said, and particularly when the tool has incredible potential, I suppose. As I said, over the years, I would remember, hey, listen, I go back even before Salesforce, Siebel. I don't know if you remember Siebel was in the late 1990s.
Yeah.
So that was the... Right. So Siebel, I think, I don't know if Oracle bought it in the end. I can't remember, but it disappeared anyway. I mean, that was where it was at one point. But I said that would have been a much more basic application. I first came across Salesforce, oddly enough, in about 2002, 2003. I went to see Mark, is it Benioff, the CEO? He came over. I was in a room of about 30 sales directors, and he rocked up. And this was him pitching Salesforce as, I think they used to call it, it might have been an ASP. It wasn't software as a service at the time. I think it was I can't remember, application service provision. I can't remember what that was. But again, it's developed over the years. But to actually know what to do with it when there's so much complexity, oftentimes, and let's put myself in a similar position perhaps to the MSPs you're talking about there as a kind of small business owner, where do you get the knowledge? Where do you get the information from? And even if I was to go online and try and find it out, the possibility is it changes every few months. So you need to have a kind of up-to-date awareness of what the tool can do. So we've kind of explored in great detail there. I've got to thank you for the kind of for the overview, not only of LinkedIn, but you've brought HubSpot and even Salesforce into it there. In addition to LinkedIn, you mentioned some of your clients might come to you. They got this idea about kind of social media or and other kind of digital channels. Can we have your thoughts on YouTube? I still call Twitter. I still call X Twitter. I can't quite get my head around X. But thoughts, particularly from a business perspective here: YouTube, Twitter, or X, Instagram, and oh dear, TikTok. I don't know whether there's anything there for B2B sales organizations, but what about those social media and kind of digital platforms for marketing purposes?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, YouTube's a really powerful platform, so it's really interesting. And when we do our proprietary research, one of the questions we ask is, where do you go and find information, right? And we capture the demographic information of these people. So we typically see that people between the age of 18 to 25, if they want to go and search, they're going to search something like YouTube or maybe Meta or TikTok or something. The next demographic, which is going to be 25 above, they might go to YouTube, they might go to Google, and then the older demographics, they typically just go to Google, right? So the behaviors are changing a lot. So the right answer is you should pretty much repurpose all of your content and post it everywhere, right? Because you want it to be everywhere, because different demographics are searching in different ways. So that's the right answer. Now, again,
and it's free to post as well, typically, isn't it? I mean, on all of these platforms, there's no cost.
No. All of these platforms is free to post. There are costs involved if you want to promote that content. But the reality is, search now. Let's just not call it social media platforms, and let's just call it search, right? Because people are searching for content. YouTube, for example, is, I think it's now like the second biggest search engine, right, after Google. And I know myself, right? So the way I learn is to watch, right? I don't really read that much. So if I want to learn something, I'll go onto YouTube and I'll just put the search in and I'll hopefully find a good video. And those videos are coming up for me either because, I've shown interest in the past and therefore the algorithm knows that I have interest in those videos, or because I'm using very specific search terms. So, your videos, the titles should be related to the content within the video, right? Because that's what people are going to be searching for.
I have changed them, by the way. I don't know if you checked on me here, but you gave me the piece of advice last week of I'll take that to the bank, I thought, and I've definitely done that. Intrigued. One quick point there, if I can. You mentioned, I'm perhaps like you. I like to watch. Odd, we're doing a podcast here. You call it a podcast, but I prefer. I watch my podcasts rather than listen to them. But I was chatting with Pete, the producer, just earlier before you joined us online here. He was saying that he did his first podcast on iTunes, I think, back in like 2006, which was kind of probably right at the very, very beginning when there were only a handful. I think he even said that the podcast he was involved in at that time was kind of number one for a 6-week period at that point. But I tend to, as I said, we put this out on Spotify and on Apple. But for me, I do you prefer to watch, or will you listen to podcasts?
Both, right? And this again goes back to repurposing the content for all of the platforms. Sometimes, I don't want music on in the background. I very rarely listen to music in the background while I'm working, but I'm quite happy to listen to a podcast. Now, if I'm doing work, I can't watch and do the work, right? So I'll just listen to it on Spotify or Apple. But then there are other times when, I might be just chilling out on the sofa and I just want to break for 30 minutes and I'll just stick it on YouTube, right? So it all depends. And people are consuming content now in so many different ways. You really do need to repurpose the content for all of the platforms. Now, if you're an MSP, if we take it back to the MSPs, there is very little likelihood that they have the time to do all of this stuff, right? So if they don't want to go down the agency route, maybe they haven't got a budget, or it's just not a route they want to go down. Then you really have to be you have to be selective, right? But you have to do something, right? That's just the reality. Now, if you have take it back to the CRM, if you have a good CRM, you can actually post to all of these different channels from your CRM. So you don't have to individually log into Instagram and individually log into Facebook and Twitter. You can use the social media tools within the CRM to actually publish your content into all of the different platforms without having to log in. So you effectively write it once, and it just gets redistributed to the platform. So there are ways to make life easy when it comes to doing marketing, right? So that the tools now are extremely advanced. Yes, they take some learning, but if you don't want to do that learning, it's kind of on you, right? So it's it's one of those things. But otherwise,
and is the learning available, Jay? Is the learning available online as well for that, or does it have to be passed down from some kind of master practitioner to the the new apprentice?
No, so one of the good things about product-led growth SaaS companies, right? So which is what most of these CRMs are, or marketing platforms are, is they are very, very good at providing learning materials.
Yes.
Right. So if you went to HubSpot, just the regular website, you'll have a resources section on their website, which is literally hundreds of thousands of articles long, right? There's unlimited resources on HubSpot. Obviously, it takes time, right? And you need to use it you need to read and you to educate yourself on it, but also use it at the same time. It makes more sense to do it that way. But all of the marketing platforms available have this kind of resource section. We have it on our own website, right? So if an MSP went onto our website, clicked on resources, they'd find hours and hours of material on there where they can learn how to do their own marketing, right? So it's just something that we do.
Yes, yeah. As I said, it's a case of putting in the time and effort. If you put the time and effort in, you can learn it. But you've got to go seek and you shall find, I think the phrase is.
Yeah, if you're a small MSP and you don't want to use an agency, or maybe you just don't have the budget, it doesn't take an awful lot, right? You're talking like a 30 to 60 minute investment in education on how to do some marketing per day, right? Now, you might want to do that before work, you might want to do it after, you might want to do it before you go to bed. It depends on what your learning routines are like. But, after a couple of weeks, you're going to be proficient enough at least to send out a social campaign or an email campaign. And you never know, you might win a client, right? MSPs is big margin. If you win a client from a couple of weeks of learning, it's a pretty good return.
And it's generally recurring revenue. So hey, you never know. If your client grows, then your business can grow significantly or dramatically on the back of that. Listen, Jay, I could sit here and I could talk to you for much longer because I'm learning a lot. Well, just chatting with you here, and I appreciate your candor and your willingness really to kind of give us some insight into how you're thinking. Where could people find you? I saw you, actually, you got a post on LinkedIn today or yesterday, which I thought was good, telling people some do's and don'ts. But where else can people find you at xpandly?
Yeah, so LinkedIn, you can search me on there, or you can just get in touch through the website, so xpandly.com, if you want to get in touch that way. But generally on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. I've really enjoyed our chat. Thanks for taking time out of your day. Hopefully we can get an opportunity to do this again at some point in the not too distant future, but I'm sure for those that are listening, everyone will have taken something away from this conversation. So once again, Jay, thanks ever so much. Look forward to seeing you at some point in the not too distant future. And until then, all the best.
Cheers, Matt. Thanks very much.